The kinds of headphone systems that we'd run in a home studio are really quite different from the kinds of headphone systems that we'd run in a professional studio. So this video is going to outline the major differences between a pretty simple home studio setup with an interface as being the only piece of hardware versus a fully fledged recording studio where we have mixing consoles and a dedicated headphone management system. So if we look at how latency builds up through a system, we can see that it's introduced at a number of different stages. So there is a very small inherent latency in any form of analog to digital or digital to conversion, but it is so small as to be almost insignificant. We then have latency associated with whatever computer bus we're using, for example, USB, Thunderbolt, Firewire, any of those kinds of protocols. So that will introduce just a little bit of latency as well. Finally, we also have latency that's introduced by the driver on the computer. So on Mac OS, that's Core Audio, and on PCs, that's typically ASIO. This is one area where we do have a little bit of control over latency because we are able to vary the DAW buffer size in software. The larger the buffer at this point, the greater the latency. So you can see that there is latency involved in both the input side and the output side, and all of that accumulates to give you your total latency that is heard between the moment you actually start to perform or make a sound and then you hear that sound coming back into your headphones. So if we look at the generic requirements of a headphone system, we actually need to be able to hear the live mic that we're performing into alongside any recorded material that we have already in our DAW. So that means we need ultra low latency, because when we're working in a professional studio, we're often recording a number of musicians at once. We also need the capacity to build several different headphone mixes for multiple performers at the same time. Performer 1 may want to have a different headphone mix to Performer 2, and they all need to be working in the same take, so we can't adjust the headphone mix between takes. Lastly, it's good if headphone mixes can be stored and recalled in the DAW session. So that means we can store everything about that session in the session itself. So if we need to take a break for a couple of days and return to the studio, we can come back to our headphone mixes after a break. So in the home studio situation with the simple external audio interface, we're just bypassing the DAW software entirely. We're sending the signal from the mic through the zero latency direct feed to the headphones and going nowhere near the software. In a Pro Studio, instead we plug our microphones into a mixing console or a set of high quality external preamps before recording into a high-end Pro Tools HDX system. The Pro Tools HDX system includes a special PCI interface card which is dedicated to handling all audio input and output processing independently of the host computer. This allows very low latency to be achieved even when the computer is under stress from a large session, and it's one of the reasons that the Pro Tools HDX system is so widely used in professional studios. Attached to the PCI card is a set of Pro Tools audio interfaces. In our studio, we have 32 inputs and outputs available. We then dedicate some of these outputs to feeding a specialized headphone management system called the Hearback. The Hearback is responsible for all headphone distribution, and we can distribute 4 stereo or 8 mono audio channels into the studio. It has a pod system which allows performers to mix their own headphones from a control panel. This puts performers entirely in control of their own headphone mixes and allows for each performer to set their own headphone mix independently of any other performer. Because the Pro Tools HDX system has such low latency, even when the system is being pushed hard under load, it's possible to derive the audio for the headphone mixes from within the application itself, unlike with a home studio setup. So this also means the headphone routings and levels can be stored within the session for later recall. The Hearback headphone system is connected to a dedicated set of audio interface outputs, in this case outputs 25 to 32. To distribute the Hearback, you then create sends to these outputs from within the Pro Tools session.